Hey, Bomb Squad, if you're a comedian or a podcaster looking for an affordable website solution with a modern look, then we recommend Puck's Hub. With a Puck's Hub website, you can set up your new website in minutes with easy-to-use pre-built templates. Puck's Hub websites are customizable and can easily be integrated with other platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. The best part? Puck's Hub plans are only $5 per month. We use Puck's Hub for our website at the Art of Bombing podcast, and we think you should too. That's why we've partnered with Puck's Hub to offer listeners a free 60-day trial. Head over to puckshub.com to subscribe and use promo code AOBPOD at checkout for your 60-day free trial, and then pay only $5 per month after that. Take your career to the next level with your own Puck's Hub website today.
Dan Bublett's Comedy Productions.
Know your audience. That's what's coming up on the Art of Bombing, episode 270.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Now podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to the Art of Bombing podcast. It is me, your host, Dan Bublitz Jr., and with me, as always, is my co-pilot, co-host, and co-producer, Mr. Josh Shirley. Did you have a good weekend, Josh?
I sure did. I was working on something for work. Okay,
oh,
stay with me. I was working on something for work, and I was relating a concept at work to an episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, meaning it plays out the same way every time. You know,
I was gonna say, meaning your job sounds cool.
Yeah, sometimes it's really fun. Were you going to
combine work with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
With the turtles, baby. So the point is, you know, there are certain patterns that you can see, just like there are patterns in an episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles where everything starts off okay. And then all of a sudden the turtles are watching April O'Neil on the news. And then the turtles say, I bet Shredder's behind this. Scene change, Shredder's behind this. And then the turtles are in some sort of mortal danger, but then they get out of it and they save the day. And that's just sort of the 4 steps to any episode. But it makes us...
They're called story mechanics.
Story mechanics, but it makes it compelling, you know?
Yeah,
and I try
absolutely.
to teach people to be compelling in their storytelling and in what they do, and I'm making that point. But in the process, I was like, what? Like, I used to watch this show when I was like 8 or 9, and like they used to draw April O'Neil like borderline inappropriately. I mean,
they did that with
what's
a lot
the
of
point?
Cartoons. They did that with a lot of cartoons.
That's right. Was that like an 80s and 90s thing? Where
I think so. Look at He-Man.
Right.
Look at the characters from that.
We're talking about kids are watching the show. I mean, I can understand if it's
thing with that
dudes
is
between 18 and 35. Like you're gonna, fine. It's a Marvel movie. But
here's the thing: the reason I think they do that is they're trying to appeal to those because a lot of times parents have to watch the stuff with their kids. So I think they throw that in there to give them something to enjoy.
Okay. Maybe so. My dad was not watching the show with me though. It was just me and a bowl of Fruit Loops.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because this week on the Art of Bombing podcast, we have not one but 2 guests. We're doing we have a dynamic duo this week. We have Scott and Ace. They are the host of the Behind the Funny podcast, which is a fantastic podcast where they take a look at obviously behind the funny. They go behind the scenes with comedians and talk about, kind of what where their material comes from, where they came from, how did they get funny? How do they write their material, the process, things like that. And one thing that's really interesting, they always end their shows with having the guest tell a bombing story. And that's how we got connected. They just happened to be, I don't know, they just discovered us somehow, that they were like, wow, there's this podcast that is dedicated to our last question. And come to find out, we've been podcasting about the same amount of time. They started a couple months before I did, but we've both been going for 6 years. So we, both podcasts have a lot of content out there. So I encourage you, if you want to listen to another comedy podcast that really gets into the nuts and bolts of comedy, go check out Behind the Funny with Scott and Ace. I was a guest here recently where we mostly just talked about this podcast because Scott was so fascinated by the fact that there was a whole podcast dedicated to this one question that they always pose at the end of their podcast. So you'll even see some of the guests that have been on The Art of Bombing have been on that podcast. So there's a little bit of, some overlap. So yeah, go check that out. And that's who we got to. And that was a great conversation.
Great conversation.
Too. It is. I mean, we talked a lot about professionalism in this, and that's what, spoilers, that's what the callbacks episode is going to be about on Thursday, is Josh and I really went into a deep dive into what we think, being a professional is, and being a professional and professionalism, and some of the key attributes to making that happen. So that'll be coming out on Thursday. I don't have anything really to promote this week. Just go check out the old website, danbublitz.com. I got some stuff coming up. I don't even know. I've been holding back so much on comedy. I don't even know what I have.
When I want to know what I'm doing next, I go to my website.
That's what I do too.
What's coming up this weekend?
I know what I got. I got a local show this week. I'm not
Very
on
nice.
it, but I'll be producing it. There we go. Crow Hop Brewing in Loveland, Colorado.
Get in there.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, do you got anything you need to plug this week?
I'll have to check my website.
Well, while he's checking his website, I'm just going to let you guys, just want to remind everybody that we're no longer doing the outros, because instead of doing outros and talking about the episode, we just turned that into a bonus show called Between Bombs Callbacks, and that comes out on Thursdays. So, be ready for this on Thursday. We've got a great episode about professionalism. Okay, Josh, did you check your website? What do you got?
There's nothing going on this weekend.
Oh, that was a waste. He left for nothing, and that's why you guys should fire him. That's why
I know.
I
should be fired,
Josh.
guys. I haven't been fired in a long time, and
you haven't been,
for everybody's sake. Look, it's time.
It is time.
Just let me go.
Yeah,
Give
just
me my severance.
Go to buymeacoffee.com/AOB pod. Throw a tip in the coffee pot so that we can get some coffee, and then you can write a message to fire Josh. Just anything you can fire him any way you want. You can write a whole scene. In fact, be creative. We want a creative firing.
That's right.
Because we need to get rid of him. He wastes our time. He doesn't show up on time. He's just
he's not a professional. He's not a professional. Now, I don't follow any of the rules that Ace and Scott talk about on the show. So get ready.
The opposite of professional. So, all right. That's all we got this week. We're going to get in this conversation. Make sure you're following us wherever you listen to the podcast. Share the podcast with your friends. Help us grow this show so other people will enjoy it. But right now, here's our conversation with Scott and Ace from Behind the Funny. Enjoy.
It's the art of bombing.
Have you guys had any shows this week? Or did you do any shows last weekend? Or what do you guys got going on for comedy these days?
I did a show last Friday night in a movie theater that does a comedy night. Yeah, you're talking to big time people here, Dan. So
just
sit back, sit back, buckle in. We got this
until he hears what I'm doing tomorrow night.
We got this. And it was, bless the guy that's running the show. He's a hustler, but he's a little inexperienced. And, I don't like to step on anybody's toes. It's his show. And he's getting ready to start the show. And I'm like, hey, you want me to bring you up? No, I'm just going to go up and get this thing going. And he just walks up and doesn't even do like any type of welcome everybody. Please turn yourself on. Any type of normal intro stuff. He just goes right into his act. And all of a sudden people are like, oh, I guess we're starting, and lights are still on, and it was, and he didn't do well. Did not do well at all.
He did not do well.
And he's supposed to do 15. He bailed out at 9. And the next comedian goes up, and he's supposed to do 15, and he bailed out at 7.
Oh no!
When he's bailing out, I looked at the guy who went up first, and I said, "Listen, you told me to go till 9:45. I'm not doing an hour and 15 minutes to make up the time just because you guys bailed out early.
Yeah. I'm not doing your guys' time.
And he goes, no, I get it. And it was just, I just had this big hole to dig myself out of now because the crowd was like, okay, what the hell did we pay for to get in and watch tonight? So it ended up going okay because, I just spent a few minutes talking to them and kind of resetting and then working my way back into it. And it was, we finished good, it was fine.
Still,
I did about 55 minutes and everything, but man, I'm sitting up there going, is it getting hot in here?
Yeah. So you essentially worked with the Picasso and Rembrandt of the art of bombing.
Whoa.
See how I just tied all that in?
Look at that. Way to put that together.
And I didn't even tell that story because of the theme of the podcast.
I just asked what you did last.
That's exactly what happened last weekend. And it was one of those ones where Saturday night I didn't have anything booked. And a lot of times if you have a bad set, you want to go do another show to do a good set to kind of get that mojo off your back. Yep. I was so happy I didn't have to do another show on Saturday night. I just wanted to have a couple of cocktails and relax. And it was all good. And
do you find that with having as much experience as both of you have, when you run into those scenarios, do you have a hard time not saying something like, because you said you started this story by saying, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but don't you feel like sometimes with the experience that maybe it's like we should say something? Or
if I don't know the people at all, like first time I'm working with them, I'll just deal with it. I won't say anything.
Okay.
I knew these two guys from
working
them in the past and stuff like that. So I felt okay saying something to them. No, I'm not comfortable totally just walking up and going, hey, don't do this, do it this way, do it that way. I don't know. I just
I'm the
feel
same.
That...
It depends on my relationship with
Exactly.
Unless I know that it's a scenario where they don't know anything about comedy, and then it's like, okay, they need, like, especially like for corporate gigs, for example, then I would be more I would probably be more adept to be like, hey, you guys haven't done comedy, these are some things that you can do to help start the show.
That's what this was like. Yeah. That's what this was like. I told him afterwards, I pulled him aside and I'm like, listen, have someone bring you up. Because, they're not focused on you when you first walk up there. They have no idea the show just started. You wasted your first few minutes of jokes because they don't even know that a show has just begun.
Just from an audience perspective, you have to thank them for coming.
Yeah, exactly. Just the basics of stuff like that, and let somebody get them excited that the show's about to begin. And let me bring up your first comic. Just the basics of stuff. And I told him, I said, it's your show. Do what you want, but I'm just trying to help you that this will set a better stage for you when you walk out there. If you're going to be the host and the first comic,
right?
I said, I've been doing this for 21 years. I have a theater show that I do that I've been doing for 10 years. I still have somebody bring me up every time I walk out there. I probably could walk out there and salvage it and do something with it, but I still would rather have someone do those opening introductions, get the crowd focused, and then bring me out there. It makes for a better show.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
And even if you don't have somebody to do that, you need to go and do that. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
you
I've
have
introed
to.
myself backstage with a microphone before.
Yeah. Well, I've even done that on
Yeah.
stage where I'll go on stage and I'll say, hey, welcome to the show.
Exactly.
We're excited to have you. Here's this, housekeeping that's going to make the show great. And then when I'm done with all that, I'm like, all right, are you guys ready for your host? And then I give my own intro, and then I do a little twirl around the stage.
Make a joke out of it.
I did it the other night.
And it always, when I do that, it always gets a laugh too, because they're expecting somebody else to come on stage, and it's just me. I just do a lap, and then I'm like, oh, I'm back.
Exactly.
I literally just did that last week. I did a fundraiser, and I said, hey, welcome, and here's your host. And gave my credits and my intro, and then I got off stage as if I was walking away from the stage, got behind the curtain and came out from behind the curtain, and I go, it's me, and it's stupid, it's goofy, but you know what? They loved it, they laughed. That's
exactly. And it helps set the parameters that there's going to be a show, because that's very important, like what you're talking about. And even if you don't, like, going back to having somebody or not having somebody intro you, or doing a goofy intro like what we're talking about, you need to go up and address the audience right away and at least say, hey, welcome to the show, so they know it's starting.
It's starting.
Exactly.
You got to give them an indicator. Some kind of an indicator that the show starts.
Yeah, you don't just walk on stage and launch into your act. They don't realize.
Not at all.
Because every other show that they've ever been to has someone that goes up and says, hey, welcome to the show. We're going to have a great time tonight. Are you guys ready to have some fun?
No, and this guy was one, he doesn't have a ton of experience, in all fairness, and he was nervous. So he just kind of walked up and he goes, all right, guys, let's get this going. And he just goes right into his first joke. And I was like, okay, if that works for you, that's fine. I wouldn't do it that way, but hey, you be you.
Yes.
It's your show. You do what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever. I'm like, he already paid me, so if this goes down in flames, there's an exit door right behind that stage. I'm jumping out the back.
First thing you look for when you walk in the room.
Whatever works. Whatever works. But it ended up, they were a fun crowd. They listened. It took a few minutes to kind of get them refocused when I got up there and everything, and they were good. And I still got the crowd to clap for those two guys afterwards and everything, because I still want them to respect the fact that two people stood up there attempting to entertain them, beforehand, and which is a hard thing to do no matter what, So.
And another thing with that too, you said that they both didn't do the time that they were supposed to do,
the guy that went second, I've worked with a lot, and I feel very comfortable talking to him. And I called him up after the show, and I yelled at him. I said, dude, I don't care how it's going. You do your time, and you take it like a man. You take your beating like a man.
Listen,
if they don't like you, they don't like what you're doing, too bad. You count down every minute, and you take it like a professional.
We were talking about it last night, because I said one of my pet peeves is if you're someone who's done a bunch of open mics and you want to start getting paid work, you need to be ready to get paid work. There are certain expectations of someone who is going to get paid. It's not just being funny. It's not just being professional on stage. Being professional off stage is important too.
Yeah.
If I ask you for if I ask you to email me a bio and a headshot, you need to send me a bio and a headshot, because guess what? If not, your name's going to be on the flyer and there's going to be no picture.
Yep.
And it's not like, and I know I sound like the old guy, like get off my porch, but it's not like the old days where
get
you had
off my stage.
You bastard, you son of a bitch, get off my stage, you.
But it's not like you have to.
You Schwarzer,
There
you.
he goes. He's a half a drink in. I'm not going to get a word in edgewise on this podcast.
Banana.
No.
I tell you, these youngsters nowadays.
We can swear at least once, right?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
I tell you, you Schwarty.
What I was saying was, it's not the old days where you had to hire a photographer for $300 and have headshots made and then reproduced by ABC Printing so you could send them out because you had 500 lithographs for another $100. Like, everyone has a digital camera. get some good lighting, take a nice picture, and use it for a headshot. Or if you want to get paid for it, pay for a photographer to come in. They're not as expensive as they used to be.
Oh,
but
no,
don't
not at
ask
all.
me to be on a show if you're not going to be able to send me a headshot, send me a bio.
Right.
Because
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
that's only going to promote the show for you. You
Yep.
know?
Well,
I'm
and that,
sorry,
I
I'm
mean,
off
that's
my
why
soapbox.
I started teaching workshop on, EPKs, because so many comedians, they don't even know what it stands for.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're going to be in this business, you need to know at the very minimum these things.
The BTK killer was a very serious thing. And
Yeah,
they
people need to
that.
know about that.
Yeah.
They do.
Because we don't want to repeat that.
Oh, you said
Exactly.
You
I
said
s-
Oh, yeah, that
tomato-
I
too.
screwed
That
it
too.
up.
We need to
tomato.
raise money and wipe that out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The
What's
mind
funny,
is a
too-
terrible thing.
Because
In our time.
I had a situation where I had a headliner and a feature, and the headliner vouched for the feature. And so I assumed that the feature could do a feature time slot. He vouched for him. Okay, I respected this headliner. Take his word for it. That comic only did like 10, 12 minutes. Didn't have a full feature set. And it caught me off guard. I did not know that.
Of course.
And so after the show, I was like, hey, I'm sorry, but I'm not, you were supposed to do this amount of time. You did half the time. I'm only giving you half the pay.
Have to pay.
Yeah.
I'm going to give the rest of it to the headliner because he had to take,
Yeah, he had to make up the time.
and I hated to be that person, but it was like also in a
No.
it was a scenario where this is what we agreed on. And if you're not going to do the full agreement, the agreed upon time, you're not getting the full
But at
agreed
least-
upon pay.
At least they did the time. So what I did last weekend was this fundraiser, and God, how do I explain this? Because it was a fundraiser for
I want to watch you tap
I
dance
know.
on this one.
So listen, first of all, I love this group. They love me.
You've done multiple shows with them.
I've done
Yeah.
multiple shows with
Yeah.
them. It is a group called Chums. Chums.
They don't go shark
No,
fishing.
No, it's not.
They
that.
don't go shark fishing.
No, it is.
2,000 men went in the water. 327 came out. Sharks got the rest.
Are you done?
Hey,
Yeah.
Can you
5,000 I'll hunt them for you.
If you can't
10,000
tell,
I'll kill them. I'll give you the head, the tail, the whole damn thing.
having a conversation with a married couple today.
Oh, nailed it, Dan. Nailed it.
Do you know how many people come on and go, you two are like a married couple?
Old married couple.
Yes, and I am the abused wife, if you want to know.
USS
'Cause he
Indianapolis.
doesn't shut up.
1942.
Anyway, no. This group that
I'll never put on a life jacket again, Chief.
the group that I just edit him out.
Yeah,
and
right.
I will eventually
Just all
get to
of
the story.
podcast, we just
Yeah, just no. Whenever you want to hear his story, where I'm being respectfully quiet, you can play his story. But then when I'm trying to get mine out, it'll sound like a bunch of jump cuts because I'll get one sentence in at a time.
If you use Audible, just use noise reduction,
Yeah.
and you can take me right out.
Yeah. Yeah, just
Great editing,
highlight
Jeff.
Scott's voice and then put in noise reduction. It'll take them all out. The art of editing. That's a new podcast.
That's a new podcast. Nice.
The art of editing. No, this is a group. It is an organization of affluent African American women who provide scholarships for kids, for especially kids in the inner city. So it's a great organization. Did this? This is the second time I've done it for them. They request African American comics on the show. And then they always follow it up by going, "Oh, but you're okay too, Ace. We like you. We want you on there too."
Because they want the one token Italian white guy.
I'll tell you.
Okay, I have questions.
Yes, yeah.
My
Hold your
first
questions to the end of the presentation,
Yeah.
please.
Okay, I'm
Hold your questions. Write them down because I will answer them.
because I do have questions.
But here's what
As you should.
Here's what happened. So I go up. Well, first of all, this is to get to your story about the feature that really couldn't feature. Another headliner, not the one I had on this show, I was like, I need a clean, because they want it like squeaky clean. I need a clean African-American, preferably woman, female comic, because I like to have a mix on the show. And they, it's a women's organization.
Not to
I
get
want
too
that.
specific.
But here he goes.
Could she be 5'3" to 5'5"?
I don't know how tall she was. All
Between
I know
the
is
ages of 24 and 27.
I reached out to another headliner that we work with who said, "Oh, I've got someone for you. She's clean. She's a good feature. We've used her a couple of times. She'd be great. Awesome." I call her. I said, "Hey, I know you have never worked with me, but I've got this fundraiser. I need a solid feature, 25 minutes clean. Can you do it?" She goes, "Yeah, I could do it." And she didn't sound excited. Like, if someone who's never booked me before reaches out to me for a show, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I'm in. Yeah, what do you need?" I'm excited that they're booking me.
That is, especially if somebody else recommended
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's a compliment.
Exactly.
That's a huge compliment.
So I book her a week before the show. I confirm both acts. She gets back to me, says, "Yes, I'm looking forward to it." Great. Send her the information. The show was supposed to start at 7 p.m. At 4:10, I got a text saying, "I'm so sorry." Actually, I don't even think she said she was sorry.
No, she didn't. He showed me the text.
I'll read you the text because I have it saved. Why not?
Throwing shade.
I'll throw shade. I'm not going to name her name.
Dan, you book shows, so you know how stressful it can be at times.
Especially a corporate gig. Like, it's hard.
Well,
like, that's
but
not...
any gig you booking, you're confirming, you're making sure everything's lined up.
Doing everything
what time people are supposed to be there. You're lining everything up. And then this happens less than 3 hours before the show.
Okay.
But this is my point, though.
Go ahead.
If I'm booking a regular show versus a corporate gig, a regular show, yeah, it's still stressful, but a lot easier to fill because the thing with a corporate show, there's way more criteria. Like,
right.
Yes.
Yes.
Example,
Exactly.
Needed. They were looking for a particular demographic, and it had to be clean.
Right.
And so canceling last minute, that's a lot harder to fill.
That's
than
what
if
made
it was
this
just a regular show.
Right.
Exactly.
That's what made this very stressful.
So just under less than 3 hours before I get, "Good evening, Ace. My humble apologies for not being able to attend today. Not do your show, not work for you, not do the comedy. Attend," as if she was an audience member. "I have a family event I was called to last minute, and my presence is required. I would like to get together in the near future. Please call me to set something up. I looked forward to attending shows in the future. God bless. Again, I am so sorry. It's imperative that I be present." You didn't say it was a family emergency. You didn't say it was a medical emergency. It was a family event you were called to. I'm sorry. I will not be reaching out
and
to you.
I look
We
forward
will
to
not be
getting together in the future for what, lunch?
No, pretty much. I don't hold grudges. I don't get mad at people.
No.
But you're dead to me. I just don't have time.
Dude, you could have said, "I'm not going to hire you again, but I don't hold grudges, but you're dead to me."
No. I won't speak ill of her other than on a podcast. But I just will never. I will just never book you again. I don't want to book you. I don't want to work with you. You have shown me that is unprofessional. If you said, "I'm so sorry, my mother was rushed to the hospital, my father was rushed to the hospital," a family emergency. This is a family event. That makes it sound like my sister's cousin is having a birthday party and I have to go.
Now, Dan, flip side to that coin, because him and I, obviously, we discuss a lot of this stuff. I have a theater show that I book 4 times a year. And I get 4 headliners, and I had a comedian one time reach out to me 2 weeks before the show, and he said, "I'm really sorry to do this." Now, his face is on the poster. We're doing radio ads. We're doing all this stuff. Right. So he's out there, but we always put subject to change without notice. You have to do that.
Yeah.
He goes, "I'm so sorry to do this, but I got a phone call. I got to fly out to Los Angeles to do a writing gig, so I'm not going to be able to make the show." He goes, "I hate when I have to cancel, but I called these 2 comics, and they're both available that night. If that helps you at all, they are available for you." I have no problem with that.
Right.
Because one, I mean, the guy's got a writing gig for television that he's going to fly out to, and two, he actually went the extra step to try to help me fill that spot for him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
With people that were
comparable
of his level, you know, that were comparable. So I have no issue with that whatsoever. I get that. I don't have a problem with that. And then I eventually rebooked him, and he came out to the show and did a great job and everything. But then you have the flip side. We have a couple of comics that we've talked about. I had one guy that I booked for the same theater show who the day of the show called me and said, "Oh, I'm really sick. I got the flu. I can't make it." All right, it happens. You know, people get sick.
Yep.
I book him a year later. The day of the show, he calls me. I fell down and hit my head and I have a concussion. I can't drive there. You are the most unlucky person I've ever met in my entire life.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
But, you know, and again,
Wow.
like Ace said, whatever. I'm not going to.
And that's why you don't hire gingers. Sorry.
I'm not going to say he's dead to me. but
But
you
you're
knew
definitely
him.
not.
I've
Okay.
known this guy for
You've
years.
known him. This woman's dead to me because I don't know who she is. I've
no,
never worked with
but
her.
I will never reach out to this guy
no,
again.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah.
Because I'm not
Well-
going to book someone I can't count on to show up.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you work with that person that one time, and even going back to not filling the full time. You know, it's a whole other thing. You
Yeah.
have to show up, not to do the gig, but it's another to be there and not fulfill
do
the
your
time
time.
you're supposed
Yeah.
to do.
It's-
But in situations like that, it's you can go back and forth on, do I say something or just let it go? Because I'm in the mindset I want people to get better, and if I know a newer, and that's why I explain, hey, you didn't do your time, I can't pay you the full amount. That's just not how this works.
Right.
But in other instances, where I see that happen, where comics will come in and they're supposed to do X amount of time and they only do part of that time, I might not say anything, but then I'm
Right.
also just not going to ever book them again. And
Yeah.
if somebody
Well, but see-
asks me about them,
Well, can I
that's the
let
other
me
thing. I'm going to say they're
Right.
funny,
Yes.
but they didn't do their time.
See, but you
Look-
just gave me a great idea because I've people have asked me, "Oh, do you teach any comedy classes?"
and I think we should.
I don't want to teach.
Well, I don't know. Let's not be hasty.
Well, I don't. Yeah, no, I don't. In other words, I've always been
It'll
the
just
type.
be you two interrupting each other.
Exactly.
And the class standing
or me
there
trying to
dumbfounded.
talk. No,
Hey, as long as we
I've-
get paid, I think that would be perfect.
no, honestly,
All right, people, this is what comedy is. Two guys that can't get along and just argue all the time.
even during my day job, I've never been the type that wants to take someone brand new and make them good. I want to take someone who's good and make them great. And so I almost want to do an advanced comedy class, not on how to write, but how to move from open micer to a paid professional thing.
Oh, yeah.
Where you literally, we're going to go over EPKs. We're going to go over showing up on time. We're going to go over, what to expect if you want to get paid to do comedy.
Yep.
Well,
I
it's
think
funny-
It would be
Professional.
great.
It's funny you say that because I took this advanced coaching class on how leaders can become better coaches
Yeah.
for people that work for them.
And that's all
and
this
they
is.
and they said that anybody that manages people or leads people, you have your A players, your B players, and your C players. And you probably 20% of your personnel are A players. 20% are the C players, the lower performing. Most of your people probably fall in that B category.
Yep.
But most managers will work their hardest on the C's.
Oh, absolutely. I took a management course, same
Most
thing.
of them, when
you should be
when-
spending it with the A's and the B's.
and right, because if you could move some of the B's to the A category, you'll get more bang for your buck than you will trying to move any of the C's up to the B's.
And if you work with your A's, they're more motivated
yes,
to work.
exactly. So it's funny you say that because that
Yeah.
popped right in my head when you
Yeah,
when
that's
you,
a good point.
when
That's
you
a good
said
point.
that.
Yeah.
Now, Dan, let me ask you this: have you ever had anybody, because you book shows as well, that's on stage and they are doing their full time, but it's not going well, where you've lit them and cut them off early? Because they're really doing poorly?
I don't remember a specific, but I have had to do.
No,
that.
I'm not asking you to name anybody, but
No, I know, but I
Hey,
mean,
this is his podcast. Let him ask
also-
the questions.
I've been doing this for such. a
I
long
did that
time,
once.
too.
I did that one time, so I just wanted to ask him.
No, and I've definitely like I said, I can't remember a specific time, but I know in my history of doing shows that has happened at least once where they were just not doing good. They had to get the light.
And you know that you could fill the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the longer they're up there, the more they're alienating the audience from the entire show.
Yep. And you're just like, we got to save the show. This is gonna stop now.
Yeah. I did that too.
At least you tried.
Yeah. Here's a star.
I'll even say that, like, if I'm hosting open mics and stuff sometimes, like, not that I do a lot of them, but when I do, I'll say to comics, I'll say, hey, this is how much time we're doing tonight.
Yep.
Don't feel like you have to fill that time. If we're doing 5-minute sets, but you can only do 3 minutes, do 3 minutes.
And do it the best you can.
Go out on a high note. Don't try to drag it out.
That's
smart. You're just going to make it worse. So
that's smart.
And in a scenario like that, because it's an open mic, it's way different. You don't have to fill that time.
Right.
And again, that's how you get better is like, you get better, chunks at a time. So 3 minutes at a time. That's how we get better in comedy.
But
and because when you do stretch it, if you don't have anything, oh my God, that's like, it's so hard to sit through and watch somebody struggle. And I know because I've been that comedian.
No, we all have. I think the worst thing to watch, and we know a couple of people that have been doing it for years that just have never got any better.
Oh,
God bless them.
And they're never going to get any better.
God bless
and
them.
They
They're
just
still
keep
doing it.
They just keep going out, and they keep doing that same bad material
and
that they're doing.
Somehow they always crush when we're not around.
Oh,
they tell you about all the times they crush, but I've never seen it.
Yeah.
It's
Neither has an audience.
It's an enigma, It's just it's like a flight MH370, the Malaysian flight that disappeared. It's just never been seen.
Well, it's funny we're talking about filling time because I just did a corporate gig last weekend. And I filled the time, but I struggled because there was spots where I would have expected better reactions, and I didn't get the reactions that I wanted. And
it throws you off.
And it threw me off, and then I felt like I started getting choppy because I was just like reaching for bits. I'm like, well,
where do I go now?
They didn't like that, so let's pull this in. Oh, they don't like that either, and then I'm just like reaching.
So instead of going in the normal flow, you're just pulling jokes from different sections of your act.
Yep. I'm just like, nope.
Ace has told a couple of stories about corporate gigs that he's done, and like he said, you go there and they have a podium with one of those little pencil mics, and it's not set up for it, and the people don't want to laugh too hard because the HR manager's there,
or they give you information about the group or someone there, but before you go on, the person who's hosting the night blows through all that material.
Oh, yeah.
So you're like, all right, you sent me all this stuff, and now you just did it. So there goes the customization, Yep.
It's like, well, everything I was going to do.
Yeah, exactly.
But I still did my time. So that was the moral of that story. I struggled, but I got there.
You still did your time.
I did. I did.
Because you have to.
You do. You have to. That's what you're getting paid for. And the people who booked me, they seemed happy with the performance, and they could just be being nice, but I have to take it at face value. They said they enjoyed the show and they enjoyed it, so that's all that matters. But I also know there were other elements, that I'm aware of because I've been doing it so long, where I'm like, well, they were at this event for a long time, and so by the time I'm going up, they're starting to get tired.
Right.
And I even brought that up at one point in the show, and that probably got the biggest laugh.
Yeah.
That I was just like looking out
because you pointed out
audience.
The truth.
I'm like sitting there, like I said, I'm reaching for things. Things aren't going quite how I want. And finally I was like, I get it. You guys want to go home. You're like, why is this comedian holding us hostage? And I'm like, I can see the exhaustion in your face. I understand.
You know what? When you point out the obvious, you get a laugh. And that happened to me this past week at this event, because I was the only white guy on the show. And I was doing okay. I wasn't crushing. I wasn't bombing. I was kind of in the middle.
Yep.
For me, I felt I wasn't doing great. They were having a good time. They all came up after and said it was great. But at one point, as I'm about to introduce the feature, who luckily we ended up finding a feature. I found a feature last minute. As I'm bringing him up, I go, listen, folks, let me point out the obvious. I am the whitest guy on this show. It's going to get progressively darker. Don't worry. And they laughed. And then I go, because I know I'm watching you guys. And you're all like, if this cracker brings up another white comic, I am done with this night. And I got a huge laugh. And I ended on that. I just stopped, and I was like, and now for your feature. You have to point out the obvious because it'll get a laugh, you know?
And as a sidebar, my next special might have to be I'm not having a good time up here.
Yeah, right? That'd be funny, yeah.
Because only I know that, because when you said that, you were doing fine, you weren't doing great, but you weren't doing terrible.
Yeah.
The people were enjoying it, but you weren't.
But I wasn't having
fun. You knew
fun.
you weren't doing good. So
that would actually be a good documentary, and you just go around the country and have comics like catch their shows.
I think that those gigs are almost the worst when you're not really bombing, but you're not doing great. You're in the middle. Because if I'm bombing, I almost could have fun with it.
Yeah.
And if you're doing great, obviously you're doing fun.
But
when you're somewhere in
between,
the middle, you can't play with that. You can't do anything with it.
Right.
You're just kind of trudging along, trying to get
through
through it.
You're just grabbing
right. And
like,
that's exhausting.
You're getting through
That's
your time.
absolutely exhausting to get through that, especially if you're headlining and you're doing 45 minutes at the end.
No,
that seems like forever. Because I swear I've had those, and you're like, oh my god, am I almost done? I look down, I'm only 20 minutes in. I still got 25 minutes to go.
And that's how it was for me this last weekend.
Oh.
I'd hit my, I would do my stuff, and then I look down, I'm like, oh my god. I've only been up here for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That was 25 minutes worth of material.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
Because it's like, where's the applause breaks?
Yeah.
Where's the
You're not
stop?
getting the laughs
Where's
and the
laugh
applause.
break?
Yeah.
Yeah. The
That's
people are
what-
just looking at you smiling.
Yeah, smiling. Gotta love the smiling.
Oh.
I recorded
now,
a
I'm
CD.
curious, going back real quick to
Yep.
to that gig you were talking about, the fundraiser where they canceled. Were you able to find somebody last minute?
I
or did you just have to fill it with what you had?
Here's the weirdest thing. So last week on our podcast, we had a guest. He's a local guy, has only been doing it maybe, how long did he say he's been doing it? Like 7 years?
Yeah, 7 years.
About 7 years. But he's a hustler, and he produces a lot of shows, and he produces a lot of urban shows. So I've only seen him do dirtier material. So I reached out to him. I said, hey, man, do you have clean material? And he said, yeah. I said, all I need is 15. I wasn't going to have him totally feature because I knew between myself and the headliner that I had booked, we could easily – I didn't even need to hire him.
Yeah.
We could have filled the time, but I wanted to have someone else on there so it wasn't a black and white cookie on the bill.
Look to the black and white, Elaine.
Exactly. So I said, I'll put him up there 15 minutes. It'll be perfect. So I happened to reach out to him, and I said, are you booked tonight? He said, I am, but what do you got? I said, well, I have an earlier show. It's going to start at 7 o'clock. I said, I can get you up. I just need 15 minutes. I can get you up by 7:10. You could be out by 7:30,
Yep.
And he said, I can make that work because my other show, I'm closing an urban show at like 8:30. And I was like, all right, perfect. And it worked out.
Oh,
so
that's
I was
awesome.
able to the great thing about the Rhode Island comedy scene, even all throughout New England, it's such a small scene, but there's a lot of people in it that it's fairly easy to pick something up. Like I didn't have anything for tomorrow for St. Patty's Day. And last night, one of our friends texted me, said, hey, you available on Friday? And I said, yeah, actually I am. I was just going to go out. So
He's got a sweet gig for tomorrow night.
So there's something here in Rhode Island.
It's the hardest gig to get as a comedian in Rhode Island. We line up to try to get this gig.
No. There is a new he's being a I
Dick?
won't say it.
Dick?
You can say it.
I'll
All
fill
right.
it in. I'll fill
Yeah,
it
he's
in.
being a
Is he
dick.
being a dick?
So we actually had these guys on our podcast last night. So there's this thing in. So I don't know if you've ever been to the East Coast, but in Boston they have this thing called the Duck Tours.
Be careful, Dan's going to fly out and want to take this gig tomorrow night.
I'll tell you what, I've been on a duck tour. I've been to Boston.
Yeah, so they have
I've done this tour. I know exactly what you're talking about.
All right, so but
I was out as a tourist.
All right, think of the ghetto version of the Duck Tour.
No, it's not ghetto version. It's not a ghetto version. Just because they hand out flak vests before you get on the thing. No, I'm kidding. No, so the Duck Tour, you get on. It's an amphibious vehicle. Half of it drives through Boston. Half of it goes through Boston. On the river. What this is I guess it's been done in other places, but it's called the Comedy Bus.
Oh God.
And yeah. Dude,
appropriate reaction.
Let me explain though, because I did it for the first time a couple of weeks ago. It sounds horrendous,
and it is a full size bus. It's not a short bus.
Yes.
Well, I will tell you this: I know what you're talking about, and it was never fun.
Really?
I did not think it was. I mean, we made it fun, but it wasn't like.
Yeah.
No,
you're not doing your regular stand-up act.
No.
So what you're doing is the bus leaves a place. It goes through downtown Providence, Rhode Island. You point out a couple of historic places. You make some jokes. You do a little bit of material. You do 25 minutes. They bring you to a brewery. At the brewery, they provide free pizza. And then you can buy some beers, and then 25 minutes back, another comic comes up and does the second half of the tour.
Yep.
I did it a couple of weeks ago for the first time. I was nervous as shit. I'm not going to lie. I'm like, I don't know how this is going to go. I mean, I can do crowd work, but once you're done with 35 people on a bus, where the hell do you go after that?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
or if there's that many people on the bus.
But you know what? Because it's only one bus and it's new, it's kind of the new thing to do.
Okay.
So they only started last fall. So now, and then they closed down because of winter. Yeah. So they're just starting back up.
Okay. Because when we did it, so
it's fun.
This was like for part of an art fest in San Diego that was like running shuttles. So there was like a comic on the shuttle
Let's
bus.
entertain people as they're on the shuttle.
As they're on the bus or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was going through the bus route for this particular festival. So sometimes there wasn't even it was just empty.
There was no one on it.
There's no one on it. Or there'd be a couple people.
No,
whatever.
These guys are booking it as a comedy show on a bus. So people are getting on the bus and expecting there to be a comedian that performs and then the brewery tour. So it's all expected, and every comedian that's been on the bus and the people that go on the bus all are saying that it's a fun time. So, I'm teasing Ace because, obviously we all are working towards that 1,200-seat theater and that Netflix gig, not the 60-seat school bus.
Yeah, exactly. I get it.
That stops at all railroad crossings.
It sounds like you're jealous that he's got this
sweet
very
gig tomorrow.
Dan, shut up, because I'm not working tomorrow night, and I would take a bus.
That's it.
And that's
He's
exactly
just mad.
how
All right.
we found it.
Actually, you both can shut up because I got booked on an Uber ride tomorrow night.
Exactly. With your wife.
I'm sitting in the.
I'm paying them.
Yeah, I got to pay them, but I'm sitting in the front passenger seat performing for the three people in the back.
Yeah, and one of the three people is his wife, who doesn't want to hear his act.
She's paying the Uber driver to shut me up the whole time.
She's tipping the Uber driver, saying, "Listen, if you shut him up."
Okay, so we're 40 minutes in.
Holy shit!
Wow,
I know this has been going amazing.
Yeah, sorry we
got to
hijacked
get into this
it.
before we get into what this podcast is about. I said earlier when you started talking about this fundraiser you're doing, I had questions.
Yes,
and I have to get back to the one
Go
question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you said that they'd like raise funds. What'd you say they raised funds for again?
They raise funds for scholarships for
that's what I thought.
inner city kids.
Why are they called the Chumps? I'm so confused by that.
It does,
name.
And I asked
it's an
them
acronym,
that.
right?
No, it's actually not. It means chums, like friends.
Oh.
They're friends of these kids
chums.
to give them scholarship, but they do have like a creed or like a motto, and they go through CHUMS, and I can't remember. Like C is for charity, H is for helping, U is for understanding.
Okay.
So they do have a creed that goes by Chums, but Chums was started. It's actually about 100 years old, and it's nationwide. And what they do is, like I said, they hold multiple fundraisers throughout the year, and they raise money for kids, for scholarships for kids.
Okay,
so it's
that's a great thing that they're doing.
Absolutely,
I just had to know. I was like, why are they called?
And
Chums?
it's female, and it's a female
sense.
group. So I am an unofficial Chum sister after the last time I did it.
Kind of
So
makes sense.
They love me.
Kind of makes sense because lesbians love you.
I know.
Okay.
I know. Here we go.
Here we go. All right,
let's
and
get
here
to the
we
podcast.
Go. We're 4 minutes in. We have to at least address this subject, which is the art of bombing.
Yeah.
You can't come onto this podcast and not talk about a story of a time when you felt like you bombed or just a really bad show, because that's why people want to listen.
Yeah, I've never had one.
Sure, they want to come and get some comedy insight, but they really want to listen to you talk about that time you sucked. That's why we're all tuning in here.
Yeah.
At least that's why I'm here. I want to hear it.
I've got at least 2, possibly 3.
God, I can't narrow down to just 1 or 2.
I know, right? But yeah, so we're going to get this going, and we're going to start with Ace, because I know it's going to take him a long time to tell his story. Scott's going to keep interrupting.
With Scott interrupting? Yes, absolutely.
Totally unfair, but true.
All right, I'll tell it.
Absolutely true.
The first one I'll tell is a short one.
I'm a quick learner.
It's a shorter one. So out here, and I don't know if it's like this on the West Coast, but out here, especially in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, 2000s, early 2000s, big way that comics used to get hired was to do bachelor parties or stag parties.
Especially in Rhode Island.
In Rhode Island. It was a Rhode Island thing. Yeah, I guess so.
I didn't get many of them in Massachusetts or Connecticut, but Rhode Island, that was big.
For some reason, what they would do is they would hire comics to come in and do a show, and then they would hire strippers to come in after.
And do a real show.
Sometimes the comic and the stripper was the same person.
Well,
hey, you got to make that money.
I only did it twice. Shut up.
I'd be lying if I said I've never taken my clothes off for money.
Yeah, of course.
During a comedy show.
We all have. Bert Kreischer makes a fucking living on it.
Maybe I should tell that story.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
what?
well, I've been doing that before, way before he was doing it.
So one of the bachelor parties I got hired for, it was a bachelor party. Oh, no. No.
So it's a bad.
How about you
the
should,
bad gigs all kind of meld into each other.
You should tell the one about the you hear them in your ear.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So it wasn't a bachelor party. It was for an organization of contractors, and at the
in
time,
parentheses,
contractors, and at the time. It was in the early 90s, and there was a scandal that happened around here called the savings and loan scandal.
Oh, shit, yeah.
And so there was a savings and loan bank on Federal Hill, which is like the home, or at the time was the home of the New England Mafia. And this guy, Joe Malacone, was the president of this local credit union, savings and loan bank. And a lot of contractors through the state, because they were connected to other people, were putting their money in there. And all of a sudden...
Well, can I just interject real quick?
Of course, because we would expect nothing less.
The reason that...
At least he asked this time.
Now you know why my goddamn stories are so long.
Well, no, the reason this all collapsed is because these banks were not insured by FDIC. Right. They were not federally insured.
Right.
They were insured by a Rhode Island deposit insurance company.
Which went belly up.
So the banks were not secured.
Everyone did a run on the bank.
Yes.
And all these contractors were out of the money.
Yes.
For like months
or years. There were Rhode Island people that couldn't get their money out of their checking, savings, their credit cards were frozen. The entire state was screwed.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, it was bad. It was bad.
So here I am doing this show. I hire this guy, newer comic. I hire him to open for me. I said, just do 10 or 15 minutes. I'll do, 35, 40. It didn't need to be a long show. It was like an hour show. So we start the show, and they're not liking the opener. But I'm like, okay, got hired to do 15 minutes. He'll be up there for 15 minutes. Meanwhile, I'm on I had a guitar amplifier with a 12-foot cord. This is very early on. It was like a Fender amp with a 12-foot cord for the sitting on a chair. So I'm at the amplifier adjusting the sound, and all of a sudden I don't hear the opener in the speaker. I hear him in my ear because he's right beside me going, Ace, I can't do this. And he ran out of the room. He ran out and went home.
Did he quit comedy?
He kind of did.
He doesn't do it.
He doesn't do it anymore.
Was that the last? Because that would be amazing.
I don't know. I should reach out to him to find out if that was the last gig that he ever did.
That was the last.
It's probably pretty close.
It's probably pretty close. So
I can't do this.
He
runs
runs
out of
out.
the house, just like runs completely away.
Literally, like
disappears.
Forrest Gump ran out.
Just kept running.
I ran a long way for a long time.
I just ran and ran and ran until I couldn't run no more. So he runs out. Now I'm like, what the? Oh, hey, how about a hand for so-and-so, your opener? They don't say shit. I go up. I start doing a couple of jokes. And I go, what's the matter? Would you guys lose money in the savings and loan scandal? Dead silence, because half of them probably did. Now I start going into different things. And a guy, and I know, we don't want to break the F meter, but a guy pulls a 20 out of his pocket and goes, hey, here's $20 just to shut the fuck up. And I grabbed the 20 out of his hand, and I grabbed the mic. I go, hey, blowjob's in the back. You're first. Let's go. And everyone started laughing. And that's when I totally abandoned my act and did nothing but walk around table to table, or as far as my 12-foot cord would reach, and shit on everyone at every table. I would make fun of someone for looking for like someone, like, oh, look, Bobcat Goldthwait's here or something. And then I would do an impression. And that's the only way I got through the rest of the time. And by the end...
But is that the same one with the guy?
The guy at the end, I had the 20. I go, hey, man, thanks for being a good sport. Here's the 20 back. He goes, no, you keep that. You earned it. You earned that tip.
That's awesome.
That was one of the worst. So,
wow.
I'll let Scott tell another one, because I've got 3 or 4 at least.
No, we both can
easily
do
We might
dueling.
have you guys come back on another time.
Oh, yeah.
We could
just
do
to
dueling
talk about
stories.
the shit gigs. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We're going to run out of time.
God,
Scott, all right, Scott, let's hear yours.
Probably the worst one, I think, was a priest one.
Oh, yeah, those are good.
Remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
So I very early on, I think I'm a couple years in.
Yes.
Shut
I just
up.
remembered it.
Shut
Sorry.
I'm like 2 years in. I'm new, and a friend of mine wants me to book a show for his son's high school football team. Now, I have no business booking shows at this point, but I book 2 people that I had worked with that are both headliners, very funny. So I was good there. We get to the show. I'm going to host the show, and I'm doing my opening, and I'm going along, and it's going okay. And somebody says something to me, and I turn, I go, what? And the guy says something to me again. And I said, what do I got to, I forget exactly how he worded it, but I said, what do I have to confess, like you're my priest or something? I said, let me make you feel more comfortable. And I got on my knees. I go, now I'm like an altar boy. You can feel more at home. I didn't realize that, 1, it was a Catholic school, and 2, this was the actual priest that runs the school that I said this to. In that moment, when I did that, everyone in the audience decided, we hate you. And they stopped making any noise to anything I did. So I finished my set to zero noise whatsoever. And I said, all right, that's my time. Nothing. They didn't even clap to be polite. Literally nothing. And I said, all right, I'm going to bring your next comic up. This guy's one of my favorite people. I love working with him. John Turco. And they gave, like, polite claps. John came up and just crushed. He works very clean, and he's funny, and it's just great. They give him a big clap, and he goes, all right, back to your host, Scott Higgins. They stopped clapping. I go back up there, and I'm trying to do, like, 2 or 3 minutes. They are giving me nothing. Literally nothing. And so I just abandoned it. I bring up my friend Stephanie Peters, crushed. Mm-hmm. They gave her a standing ovation. She goes, all right, back to your host, Scott Higgins. They stopped clapping when she said my name. They literally decided they hated me and stuck to it the rest of the entire night because of what I did to this priest at the beginning of it. So at the end of the show, the guy that asked me to do it, this guy Terry, he comes up to me. He goes, yeah, they really are not happy with you. They feel like you should give them a discount on the show, and they're thinking like $200 off would be fair. And I didn't have the guts to argue at that point, and I just went, yeah, okay, that's fine. Just take that off. So I ended up
making. You want my firstborn kid?
I ended up. I think I made $100 that night, paid the other two, and just got the hell out of there, and learned a very valuable lesson. Make sure you know exactly who the people are you're performing for.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
Now,
I would like to know, like, even as a comedian, like, because it's for a high school football team thing. What in your mind thinks it's appropriate to do a joke like that anyway, where you drop to your knees?
I was barely 2 years
He was
in.
new.
Okay.
I was barely 2 years
so,
in.
yeah, so it had to do with inexperience.
They weren't. It wasn't St. Ignatius High School or something like that. It wasn't obvious. You know what I mean?
I mean, just in general, like,
Dan,
granted, this is, like you said, it has to do with experience.
Exactly.
And also, and I will say this. When I first started, I was pushing boundaries. I was a big Doug Stanhope fan at that time.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
When you're 2 years in, you shouldn't try to emulate Doug Stanhope.
No.
He did that after many years.
And he wouldn't do, even he wouldn't.
And even he wouldn't have done that.
He wouldn't have even accepted that gig.
Can I tell you one more quick story?
Yeah, but real quick, it's funny that you say that, though, that you shouldn't have been emulating that at Doug Stanhope or any other comic. And the reason I say that's funny is because we just did an episode of a Between Bombs episode where we talk about that, about things that comics pick up from professionals that they shouldn't be doing. And
because
that's a scenario where, like in that scenario, we talk about, like, Anthony Jeselnik can go up.
Yes.
Right. Start with the most horrendous joke right out of the gate because the audience knows who he is already, and he already has their trust.
That's
the point.
He
have to earn it in the show.
People who are going to see Bill Burr go to see Bill Burr because of what he says. Yep. Bill Burr's not doing a friggin' VFW post where Nana's sitting there who's going to be like absolutely out of her mind at what he says. You have to know your audience. And
absolutely.
At that point, 2 years in, you don't have an audience.
Oh, no.
You're playing to general audiences.
Yep.
Now, a few months after that, I get booked to do... Yep. I get booked to do a fundraiser for a school.
And it's amazing you even continued in comedy after these gigs.
Oh, trust me. I don't know how.
How you had the balls to still do it.
I don't.
After the first that first gig, I'm surprised they let you near school.
Oh,
dude,
well, wait.
Dude.
It gets better. Listen to this one.
Dude.
Okay.
So I had this real crappy bit that I did about what a man looks like when he has an orgasm. And let's put it this way. I imitated somebody that rode a short bus going to school.
Oh, no.
It was a very bad, insulting imitation at the time. Mm-hmm. So I get hired to do, and that was my closer, by the way. Just as a side note, I closed with that shit. So I get booked to do this fundraiser for this school. I'm like, all right, school fundraiser, and now I've learned to ask, is there any restrictions on material, anything like that? No, adult comedy night, whatever. So I go there, and I'm working with these two Boston comedians. One of them, I really look up to, excellent comedian. The other guy I hadn't worked with before. It was the first time I was working with him, but I had heard of him, and I was looking forward to dealing with him. So I'm going up first, and I'm going along, and the set is going great. And I'm coming up at the end, and I'm in the middle of doing that joke to close. And all of a sudden, from the back of the room, a table in the back, I hear, "Ah!" Yeah, it's a school for adults with special needs. And there was a whole table of them sitting at the all the way in the back at the show.
Again,
and
know your audience.
And I am winding up to finish with this big imitation that is pretty much going to get me lynched if I finish this thing at the end. And in my head, I went into panic mode, and I really didn't do anything at the end of it. And the crowd was looking at me like, what just happened? He didn't even do anything at the end of that. That made no sense whatsoever, because I
bailed on the joke.
I totally bailed at the end of it. It was like a car wreck, and I went, so I'm going to bring up your next comedian. This guy is a Boston favorite, because I just didn't do anything at the end. And
I mean, at least in that scenario, though, you had enough experience to know that.
No, I didn't have experience. I had a guy yell out from the back of the room, because if he didn't make that noise, I was full steam ahead.
No. But what I mean is, because you heard it, you realized what. You realize if you would have told the bit, you would have did the joke.
You're giving me way too much credit, Dan.
Well, in the scenario, that's what it seems like. You heard that, and you're like, "Yeah, I can't do this joke."
Yes, yeah,
I don't have other material right now
because it was
a month. I know I can't do the joke because
it was
going to bail.
It was a month after he had screwed over
it wasn't
a priest, So
yeah, I just had to bail out, and ever since those two back to back like that, I ask a bunch of questions when I get booked for something, so I am
living proof of the of why it's important to
well educated
know your
and well versed when I walk in and know everything.
And you know what? I did a fundraiser a couple of weeks ago, and I do a lot about growing up Catholic, going to Catholic school, making fun of Catholic, stuff like that. Not dirty or anything like that, just in a lighthearted way.
Yep.
I get off stage and people are like, "Oh my God, you know why everyone was laughing so hard? The lady right up front that you kept talking to is a nun." I'm like, "Well, great, nuns love me. Priests, not so much." It's crazy.
Wow. No, that was but it's a good testament to see how like you should be looking at your comedy and learning, not just from your like actual stand up and your material, but from them situations,
right?
Where you know that, oh, I hear this thing happen or whatever it is, and well, I can't do this material now. I've had situations like that where even just I felt the crowd get tight, where and having the skills to be able to throw that audible,
right,
and do something different, even if it's just knowing that it's time to bring up the next comedian.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely important.
Like when you're the only white comic on a black show. I know that feeling. Twice.
Oh man. Well, I got some questions that we got to get through because we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
We're this has been so fantastic, but I want to know, like, when you're on stage and you feel like you're starting to bomb or you're losing your audience, what kind of goes through your head, and what do you try to do to deviate and try to like bring them back?
I'll bail from the material and just talk to the audience.
Yeah.
I'll bring it down to a human level, and I'll just start to talk to them, ask them questions, and try to engage them and kind of pull them back in that way. Because if they're not listening to material, why keep just plowing ahead with it?
Same.
So, and I learned that from you. Well, working with you over the years, I've seen you do that If they're not, if the storytelling and that is not working, then just kind of engage with them and pull them back in that.
And
way.
it's because of the experience in doing those bachelor and stag parties, because it's a fine balance between, all right, they liked 5 minutes of my material, but once I got to 7 minutes, they lost interest. So, all right, let's shit on this table.
Yeah.
Or let's talk to this table and ask them about what they do or who's a couple, and then do a little bit of crowd work. And then go back and say, all right, well, I'm not going to go back to the joke I was in the middle of. I'm going to go to a different topic and see if they'll deal with that for a couple of minutes.
Right.
And so it's a balance back and forth.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Now, and how do you guys, like, and I'm sure this has changed over the years, but how do you, like, kind of evaluate sets, especially the bad ones, where you can look at it and say, okay, this is where it went wrong, and then try to prevent it from happening again?
Sometimes I think it's tough because, you get hired to do your material. You get hired, as a comic, you do your material. My material is not for everyone. So maybe it was the wrong crowd for my material. I'm not blaming the crowd. It's just maybe it was the wrong thing. And I don't know if there's anything that I can do. You can't write material for everyone. There's always going to be someone who's not happy. And we've talked about it before on our podcast. Sometimes you could be in a room with 300 people. 299 people are laughing at your stuff. There's one person up front not laughing, and that's who you're going to focus on. You're going to focus on, why aren't they laughing? You don't know what happened to them. From a psychological point of view, that could have been.
They might have just had a bad
shitty day.
Yep.
So I've told this story before. We were at Catch a Rising Star, had a show, and halfway through the opener's set, a group of 15 people walks in.
Oh, yeah.
Totally disrupts the show. And they sit at a table, and there's one guy at the end of the table, and the whole show he's like this, crossing his arms, and he looks pissed off. And, of course, that is going to be like a flypaper for any comic to start busting his chops. So the opener or the host busts his chops. Host comes off stage. That guy's an asshole. Feature goes up. They bust his chops for a couple of minutes. That guy's an asshole. Now I'm sitting there backstage going, you know what? I'm not going to engage with that guy because for all I know, how do I know that guy wasn't yelling at the other 14 people in the party saying, hey, we're going to be late. You guys are going to make us late. Like, get your shit together. Let's go. We're going to be late for the show. And then all of a sudden, as they're sitting down, somehow he ends up at the front of the table and gets picked on by the comics. He's not the one that made everyone late, but he's getting blamed for it. People are busting his chops about it.
That's a very good point.
So I turned it around, and I did the whole pandering. I'm like, anytime I would say something, I go, you know what I mean, sir? You know what I'm talking about, right? Like, I'm trying to make friends with him. By the end of the show, his arms were uncrossed. He was having a good time. He came out of it because I wasn't picking on him. I was making him part of the show in a positive way. We never know how that person in the crowd, like you said, they could have had a bad day. They could have had a fight with their boss an hour before they got to the show. But we as comics are so insecure about ourselves that we jump to blame the crowd. And you have to step back from that and go, what did they go through today?
Yeah.
I'm just not going to pick on that person.
And I'll
pick on someone else.
It was a headliner I worked with when I first started that told me never blame the crowd because it's our job as professionals to entertain them. At the end of the day, it's our job. And, as far as evaluating myself, in the beginning, obviously we record ourselves a lot. And we were always recording ourselves. And then I got away from that for the longest time. I didn't record anything.
I need to start doing it again.
And then I started about 4 years ago. I started recording again. And over the last 2 or 3 years, I record every set. And I'll listen to it on the ride home and reevaluate it. And if on those nights, like you said, when it's not going well, I listen to it and I go, okay, did I not tell the joke right? Could I have told it better? Do I need to rewrite it?
Right.
Was my timing off? I try to kind of critique myself because I think we each are our own worst critics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, by far and away. Even when the joke does well, we're like, yeah, I didn't tell that right. Absolutely. We're never happy. We could crush from beginning to end, and we're like, yeah, I screwed that joke
We're going to
up.
focus on the one negative, right?
You know, so I've been listening to myself a lot more over the last 3 years and really trying to, you know, tighten things up and polish and make things better. And even the good sets, I try to find where the improvement can be. On the bad sets, okay, how could I have made that work for that crowd that night?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I always try to find that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's one thing too. I record everything. I just don't.
I think
listen
that's
back
so
to it.
important. No, isn't it tough to listen to yourself, to
It
listen
is.
back to it?
Oh,
It's
I
so
hate-
tough.
oh.
But I
And
think
it's
you
not
can learn a
even
lot
because
from it.
You absolutely can, and I preach it all the time.
Yeah.
You record every set, watch it back, and then I just don't follow my own advice, except for the
know.
recording part. Because
I know.
not only do I record the audio, if I can, I
You'll
try
do
to
the
record
video.
too. Like I
Yeah.
have hundreds of hours of video.
Really? Yeah.
I
See,
have
nowadays,
I have like hard drives with extra.
Yes,
but
because
see,
that's
now
what I'm doing.
I have hard drives at home too, but I can't show you what's on.
yeah,
them.
no, that's.
I don't want the FBI to see it
That'll
either.
get them arrested. No, but it's interesting that you say that too, because that seems to be the new way to get seen, is to get a clip of you, 25-second clip, throw it up on TikTok or Reels, and people will see it, and they know what you do, and now you got
have to put that out
followers.
there.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't sit on it on a hard drive.
Yeah, I'm sitting on it on a hard drive. I'm doing what you're supposed to do, but also
Half of it.
I'm
You're just not
I'm only-
following
I'm
through.
halfway. I'm not following through.
You're not following through.
You're like that feature that only did half his time. Come on, you gotta finish the set. You
Whoa,
see that?
he put that on you, Dan. He put that on you, Dan.
Sir, that's called a callback.
No-
I don't have any in my act, but I know how to write them.
You
for other
can't
people.
write a callback for one of your jokes, but you
know.
could do it in a podcast.
I know.
Yeah, that was.
He put that on you,
shots-
Dan. He
did.
put that
Shots
on you.
Fired.
Shots fired. East Coast, West Coast, mofo.
That's right.
I'm in the mountains, just FYI.
I know.
East Coast Rocky Mountains,
there
yo.
we go.
East
That's a little
Coast Rockies.
Yeah, exactly.
Appalachians Rockies.
Yeah.
Bitches.
The big. You don't remember the great 2023 comedy debate between the Appalachians and the.
Green Valley, Rocky Mountains, bitches.
There he goes.
Oh my God, this has been fantastic. We're gonna start wrapping up.
Thanks, man.
I like to hear about, because we talk about the bad gigs. I love hearing at the end for you guys to tell me about a gig that you know, it doesn't have to be the best gig you ever did, but just a gig that was your favorite for whatever reason it might be. What's been one of your guys' favorite gigs?
For me, had to be the very first time I opened for John Panette.
Cool.
That was absolutely amazing, because at that time, and still to this day, one of the biggest comics I got to open up for, and he was so just warm and inviting. And you know, I was trying. Ace and I talk about this all the time. When you meet somebody that's big to you, you try not to fanboy out.
Yep.
You know, and
Sometimes it's hard.
It is
Oh,
so
absolutely.
hard. And I'm in the green room with this guy that, you know, he's a giant to me, not physical size, but just who he is to me. And, I just had to, in the moment, I said, listen, you know, John, not only am I a huge fan, you're my daughter's favorite comedian. And he goes, oh, that is so sweet. How old is she? I go, she's 16. Actually, tomorrow's her birthday. And he goes, oh, is she at home? I go, yeah. He goes, let's call her. I go,
Wow.
I go, excuse me? He goes, yeah, let's give her a call. So he goes, you got a cell phone? I go, yeah. We call. He gets on the phone, talks to her for like 10 minutes. We do the show. It's just him and I. He just has an opener in himself. He goes in the green room after the show, and he's getting his stuff out. Now, he's got a line of people waiting to meet him and buy merch. I mean, he sold the place out. They're just lined up to meet him. And I said, John, I know you're going to be tied up for a while. I just wanted to thank you. This was amazing. He goes, no. Don't go anywhere. You wanted a picture, right? And I said, yeah. He goes, we're going to get a picture. So we take a picture together. And he goes, hold on. And he grabs a DVD, and he signs it. And he goes, your daughter was Kelsey, right? And I go, yeah. And he goes, to Kelsey, love John, you know, keep eating. and
God,
he hands it to me. He goes, "Give that to her for her birthday."
Oh,
and
that's
it was just, not only was the audience amazing that night, I did 25 minutes, and the crowd was amazing. He was amazing. Just the whole experience was amazing, and it was just, I'll never forget that as long as I live. He was just an unbelievable human being, a great comedian. It was just, the whole thing was amazing.
That's what you want to hear about comedians, especially the ones that get to that certain level.
Yeah.
That when people meet them, they're not just that they're funny and talented, but they're just beautiful people.
And then a year later, he came back, and I got a call from the manager, and she goes, John wanted me to get back that kid whose daughter liked him to open up for him again. So I assumed that was you. So are you available to open up for John for 2 shows, when he comes back in a few weeks? So I got to open up for him again. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So
that was fantastic.
That was probably my biggest moment overall so far. I mean, there were plenty of other great moments.
Oh, yeah.
But that was the one that to this day I still think about.
That's
all the
wonderful.
time.
What about you, Ace?
I can't even narrow it down, so I'm going to tell you each one in like 2 sentences.
All kinds of no.
No, seriously.
No, he's had some amazing moments in his
career. Opening for the amazing Jonathan multiple times in the 90s, and then he emailed me one time, and I saved the email. I printed it out and saved it, where he said, "Hey, man, great working with you again. If you're ever in L.A. and you need a place to stay, here's my number. Make sure you reach out to me." So that was one. Second one, there was a young boy here in Rhode Island. His name was Dorian Murray. He unfortunately had leukemia, and his dying wish was to become famous around the world. And so they got sports teams, athletes from all around the world, famous people, and they would pose with #DStrong. And it was all over the world, and we did a fundraiser for him, and we raised like $23,000 for him to defray medical bills. Unfortunately, he passed away about a month later. That was an amazing night. Opening for Luther Vandross at a 4,500 seat in the Round Theater. It was one of the first big acts I ever got to open for. And I was so nervous because I do a lot, again, about growing up, being Catholic, going to Catholic school. Luther was a born-again Christian. And so the day of the show, they texted me and said, "Hey, just so you know, don't do any religion material."
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me? Have you seen my act? Why the hell did you hire me?
Do you know who you booked?
Why did you hire me? So I spent the day changing all of my stuff from like Catholic school to private school. I switched it around, and I went out. I did it. I had to do 20 minutes. I walked down. I got on stage. I started telling jokes. And when I tell you, have you ever had that feeling where you thought you were going to pass out, and it's almost like glaucoma? Like everything starts closing in. Everything starts getting black. And all I could see was the local newspaper headline the next day. Local comedian passes out opening up for Luther Vandross. And immediately my adrenaline kicked in and my eyes opened up, and I plowed through the set, and his security people came up to me after and said, "Hey, I didn't get to meet him, but they said, hey, just want to let you know Luther was in his trailer and he was watching you and he loved your stuff, man. He was laughing the whole time."
So that's awesome.
And then the last one that I'll say is the Station nightclub fire. We might have talked about it when we had you on the podcast. Station nightclub was a nightclub here in Rhode Island. They used to book a lot of bands, a lot of 80s and 90s bands when they were kind of past their prime in the especially in the late 90s, early 2000s. And they had booked Great White for a night. And it was the top, I think it was the third largest nightclub tragedy in America.
For a fire.
100 people died, 300 people were injured. And we used to do open mics there up until a couple of weeks before the fire. They wanted to build a memorial on the site, but they needed to raise money to buy the land off the landowners and stuff. And now there's a beautiful memorial, a beautiful park. And I did a fundraiser. They did a bunch of them, but I did one with Craig Gass, Don Jameson, and Jim Florentine. And Dee Snider was supposed to be the host. He got laryngitis. His son Shane came out, and we ended up raising money for that park. And that is one of the most meaningful shows that I've ever done. And I think it was 10 years ago.
Wow,
They just posted.
Fantastic.
And it's a beautiful park, and it's literally no one can touch that. No one can build on it. It is a amazing, amazing site in honor of the 100 people that died there that night. So that's beautiful. Those are probably the coolest ones that I've done.
That's amazing.
What, Doug Stanhope leaving you a message in the middle of the night?
Yeah, that was pretty cool too.
I got the best rejection letter from Doug Stanhope.
Did you really?
Yep, I did. When we first started putting together Snow Jam Comedy Festival, we reached out to him to headline the festival. And, not expecting to even get a reply at all. We figured he probably ain't even going to see this email. And he replied and to kindly reject, to decline. But it was the best decline ever because he was, he basically said, hey, well, it was him, and he took the time to do it. But he said, hey, thank you for thinking about me. And as a headliner for your festival, I really appreciate the offer. And he said, and then he goes on to say, every person has their own level of success. My level of success is never coming to South Dakota in the winter again.
That's awesome.
That is the perfect Doug Stanhope rejection letter.
That is
perfect.
That is awesome.
Yeah, best rejection letter ever.
Perfect.
Now, I don't know. Do you have time? I have a 28-second clip of Doug Stanhope drunk in L.A. calling me at 2 a.m.
If you have it,
I got it right
up
here.
there,
Hold
and then
on.
we'll wrap up.
Put it in here. Ready?
Hey, Aceto. Fucking called him. I go, no. He said, I opened for you at the Comedy Connection in Providence. I go, no, there was a kid. What's his name? I'm drunk. But I go, is it AA? Was the fucking AA? Yeah, AA. He goes, hey, Aceto. Yeah, that's the fucking guy, not this guy who sells fucking cars.
I don't know if you could hear it.
I heard it great. That was amazing.
All right, he was out there with a guy that used to own a comedy club, and now he's out in Hawaii selling cars. Actually, he's retired now.
Yeah.
But he was selling cars in Hawaii and L.A., and he told Doug, I opened for you in East Providence. He goes, no. A guy named AA. I remember AA. I'm drunk right now. That's all I remember, but it was AA that opened for me. And he goes, Ace Aceto? He goes, yeah, that's the guy. You didn't open for me. He did. And then they sent me this video at 2 a.m. because they were both cocked.
That's amazing.
And they were on California time, so, it was only 11 o'clock to them.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
That's amazing. Last thing. Art of Bombing. We have the Art of Bombing Get Pumped playlist. Doesn't have to be a song that gets you pumped for comedy, just a song that gets you pumped for whatever. What song are you adding to the playlist?
Let's Get It Started.
All right, that's
by
one.
Black Eyed Peas.
Oh, shit. I can't think of the name of it right now. There's a song that I use constantly to come out to at my theater show.
Is it Relax by Frankie Goes Hollywood?
You know me so well. He just knows me so
Stop
well.
it.
You stop it. This guy is
that the
crazy.
song?
No, it's by Zach Brown Band, and it is called Heavy as the Head. Chris Cornell sang it on their album.
Oh, wow.
And it sounds like a Chris Cornell song. It doesn't even sound like a Zach Brown Band song. And it starts off with a real heavy bass line at the beginning of it. And it's just got such a cool vibe, and it's such a cool walkout song. And I use that to walk out to my theater shows.
Oh, fantastic! They'll be added to the playlist. Well, this has been fantastic.
Awesome.
Where can people find you? plug your stuff. Obviously, you have a great podcast called Behind the Funny. That's how we connected. You guys reached out. I was a guest on your podcast earlier this year.
Yes.
But you have a ton of great guests. You've been doing your podcast almost as actually longer than I've been doing mine.
What is it, 6 years?
Yeah. Well, we're right at.
Yeah.
You guys started like a month or two before I did.
Yeah.
But we're right neck and neck. But either way, fantastic podcast. So
Thank you.
Definitely plug all that. Plug where you want people to go find you.
Man.
My website is Scott Higgins Comedy, SCOTTHIGGINS comedy.com. On there you can get information about me, you can get my dates, but the link to the podcast is right in there as well. It's on every podcast site though that is out there. So if you wherever you download your podcasts, if you put in Behind the Funny, you can see all of our episodes are on there. And we like to go under the hood with comedians and see what makes them tick, and why they want to do the one thing that nobody wants to do: get up in front of a crowd and talk, and then make them laugh on top of it. So that's what we like to do. So.
And you can find me on aceto.lol. So ACEACETO.lol. Everything that I do is on there. Literally, I've got comedy stuff. I recently wrote a children's book. So if anyone has kids who are losing teeth, I have a children's book called Maddie Loses a Tooth. It's on Amazon, and I do voiceover and all kinds of stuff. So, but all that stuff is on the website. That's the best way to find me.
Yeah.
Perfect. And that'll all be in the show notes. Thanks,
Thank
everybody, for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I'm doing my outro, even though this isn't, I do a separate outro.
That's
I meant
all right.
to say, thank you both for being on the podcast.
No. Thanks, Dan, for having us. It was a blast.
Thanks for having us, man. It really was. It was a lot of fun.
This has been a Dan Bublitz comedy production.